Back. Stronger than ever.
Okay, you good?
Yeah.
Let's do a podcast.
They don't know what I know. They don't know.
Welcome back to another Zengineering podcast. I'm Adam.
I'm Brian.
I feel like I always say that weird. I'm
Me
Adam.
too. I'm also still Brian, and I don't like the way it sounds when I listen either.
Yeah, I can't tell if I'm doing some kind of like radio voice. This is WNBC. Or
With Adam and Brian.
if I'm surprised that I'm Adam.
I just say it the way you say it, I think, so you're ruining it for both of us.
I'm sorry.
I'm
This is
Brian.
the second time that as a bit I've wanted to be like, okay, let's just shut it down. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks for
I'll
hanging
try to
out.
do better next time.
Find us wherever you found us.
Okay, so we're going for a bigger one this week.
A one-topic episode.
One single topic. Although I expect this one will go all over the place. So
Yeah,
who knows?
we're gonna have to rein it in.
We couldn't even come up with like a succinct way to introduce the episode.
That's a bad sign.
Yeah. We want to talk about it's like biomechanics, fitness, the physics of the body, all kinds of, sort of how all that stuff ties together. But I don't know, you want to take a stab at wrapping it up into a intro package?
Yeah, I want to talk about the place where your conscious mind interacts with your like subconscious automatic control of your body.
Right.
I purposely didn't use the word we looked up earlier because I still am not sure.
Autonomic.
I'm still not sure we're using it entirely correctly.
Autonomic, I think medically refers to like the brainstem functions. So like your heartbeat, your breathing. But I don't know. I feel like it can be extended to sort of what we're talking about, which is, unconscious behavior, not behavior,
Yeah.
but unconscious control of your body.
Yeah, like where like meditation falls into play, and like can you
Right.
take over your heart rate? How does your body respond? All the way down to like
Right.
training for a sport. Like that's kind of a meditative thing,
Yeah.
right? You're training your body, your mind to control something so that later it'll behave that way on its own. That kind of stuff.
Well, so it's
sing,
it's
you said,
it's
right?
interesting from a lot of angles because like the first thing I think of, well, to take a step back as a way of introduction, Mike alluded to this last week, and we've never really talked about it as an introduction on the podcast. But I have a background in athletics. I was a swimmer for years, trained for the Olympics, went to the Olympic trials in 2004. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about things like biomechanics. Even after sport, I was a trainer for a few years. I studied a lot of biomechanics, a lot of physiology, things like that. So I think about a lot of that stuff. But what's the interesting component to me has always been this sort of intangible piece, which I think exists if you were to say that the intangible is, exists, even though it's not tangible, I guess. Oh, I just ate that.
Interesting.
But you know what I mean? If it were to exist, it exists at the nexus of this piece of like your body as a machine and a physical mechanism, but it's controlled by this computer that like it's so much more powerful than the extent to which we have consciousness with which to actively control it. And so you talk about things like flow states, or like when you hear an athlete talk about like being in the zone, right? Like that's a certain like trance-like unconscious, like that is, they have progressed into this space of existing outside of the deliberate idea of I have a ball, I'm going to shoot it, or
Right.
whatever. I'm going to throw it at the hoop and hope that it goes in. It just happens. So I feel like the way to get from what I was just saying about my background in athletics and the idea of sport that people talk about so much, we end up getting into a thing that we've definitely talked about this before, but that I've always admired about your approach to fitness is what you do is very activity based.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you don't so much like going to the gym. I like going to the gym.
I do, but just not every day.
Right. But you don't like that as much as the idea of going for a hike or playing volleyball on the weekend or going for a run, going for a bike ride.
Yeah. I like to think of them all as activities I can sprinkle in that happen to also have a huge physical and mental benefit.
And then for me, it's like there's this interesting space where people think of fitness as a chore. And so how do you find a way to present it that lifts that burden of this thing as a chore, right?
Oh,
and part
maybe
of it
that's
is
what our
you're
topic
talking
should
about,
be.
Right? Now I want to look at the timer. We're
This is perfect.
8 minutes in.
No, this is good. We've got plenty of minutes remaining. How do we make making exercise fun? I don't know. Whatever. Keep going. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. I was mostly done with the point, right? I mean, it's like, so where is your head when you go and you do the things that other people might categorize as chore like fitness tasks that have to be done so I don't gain weight or whatever?
Right.
Because I think it's related to that flow state. I think it's related to that part of a run where you forget that the reason you're doing it is fitness, and you go, oh, there's things around me that are nice to look at, and I'm going past them and being in nature, whatever, being in the world. So talk to me about yoga, I guess.
Yeah, because that's what prompted me to put this topic
Right?
on the. I didn't want to make the topic.
Yeah,
yoga.
I could have introed that better. Let me say. So what prompted you to put this topic on the list?
Interesting. You should ask. Well, yeah. So I was reading through topic suggestions. We had some rough ones that were on there, and there was one about like the biomechanics of the body, which I know is like a very scientific approach to the same conversation, and one that you have a ton of experience and education in. And then I was kind of thinking, well, how have I? Because I was not really an athlete in high school. I've always enjoyed doing physical activities like running around in the woods and building forts and like body surfing and boogie boarding and stuff. Like I like sports, but I never trained for them. Until relatively recently, I picked up volleyball as a sport that I actually train and take lessons for and stuff. But my fitness has always been around what are the things that I like doing? How can I align the things I enjoy doing with fitness? And then more recently, the thing that's really struck me is that I've realized that the things I enjoy doing, and this works for fitness and general activities, are the things that allow me to meditate while I'm doing them, which my definition of meditation has become recently when you are able to like really focus on something. And when you try to hit that part of you try to hit this mind-body balance where your conscious mind is controlling your body in ways that you don't normally do. And the places I see this the most, I see it a lot in sports. I see it a lot in activities like yoga, like physical activities where you're trying to control your body to extreme levels. It takes full concentration of your conscious mind. And then I see it in activities I do. I see it in mainly in artistic activities, like playing a musical instrument is very challenging. And I find myself getting angry at like my fingers for not going the place they want to be. So instead of me thinking about whatever else was stressing me that day, my full conscious mind is engaged with my full physical effort. And so when you look at those two things, maybe that's where people say like your spirit resides or something, the third part, mind, body, spirit. But that is your being. There's your physical being, there's your conscious mind, and then there's this sort of abstractness of how they interact and overlap and what are they and where'd they come from. And that's the short of what kind of inspired me to bring this up. And that's yoga was the thing that revealed that to me, partly because I was aware of it I was like looking for it at that time. But it's an activity that is designed to engage you physically and use your mental your mental awareness to do that. And so it's designed to make you meditate, kind of.
Well, and they, like one of the tenets of yoga for anyone who's not familiar is it's a lot about, perform this motion while you breathe in, and then you change motion as you breathe out. Like it incorporates a lot of things that are involved in meditation,
mm-hmm.
and that strive to achieve what they call like mindfulness, which is to not just be doing a thing, but to try to be aware of aspects of that thing that you do every day,
Right.
just walking, that you don't usually think about. What are the, like, really specifically, you're walking down the street, what do the soles of your feet feel like? Try to think about just what do your feet feel like? And like where I tend to go with that in terms of sports is like when I'm running or when I'm biking somewhere or something, like on my bike, I'm not thinking don't fall over, attain balance, right? Like I just have from years and years of practice a sense of this middle spot, which is where I won't fall over. And I think anyone that can ride a bike is aware of that, right? Like you don't think go a little more right, go a little more left, go a little more right. Like you just, once you've got it, like riding a bike, you are aware of that middle spot, that balance where you don't fall over and you're in some sort of harmony with gravity where it works and you sort of don't fall over, right? And I think people are very aware of it in the bike sense when you go ride a bike, but you maybe don't think about it because you probably learned to ride a bike when you were young.
Well,
and
you
yoga
also
forces you to like stand on one leg and for a while think a little left, a little right, a little left, a little right, and really mindfully realize like I've achieved balance. Now focus on that spot and don't fall over, right?
And then it says now that you're balanced, do this next thing that will make
it hard
force
again.
you to not consciously think of the balance anymore. And then all of a sudden your conscious mind has to hand off that balance component to some other system in your body.
Right. And this is where I think this gets really cool because this is where it gets back to this training idea and maybe where we can start to break down the wall of that idea of like, I have to go work out. Like there's this sort of like, I guess, practice performance dichotomy, which I think is what all of those different things that you listed earlier share, which is like there's a difference between playing a musical instrument and playing a song. Because when you go to play that song, you're trying to make it sound like the song. And so it's not just the playing of the instrument. It's not just this note, then this note, then this note, then this note. It's like you have to have the feel that goes with that song. And so you practice, you go over to this place and you consciously, very actively go, this is the note, then this note, then this note, then this note. And you do that over and over and over again so that when it's time to go play the song, it just happens. And then you can focus on, okay, now that this just happens, how do I make this just happen at a level that matches up with, it sounds like the Beatles song I'm trying to play or whatever, right? And so like they call it your yoga practice because I think what you were just saying, like the idea is you achieve that balance and then you consciously try to do a slightly more complicated thing. And so like you said a really interesting thing when we were trying to nail down what the topic was, which was like the idea of training that people think of as a chore. When you tag it to an activity, like even if the goal is just balance on one foot, when you tag it to the goal of balance on one foot, and I say, well, if you went to the gym and you did this exercise, you could better prepare yourself for balancing on one foot, then that starts to feel more like practice than it does feel like training. And this idea of like, I got to go to the gym. Like, I really like going to the gym, but it's not because I'm trying to be ripped. It's not because I want to do the things that people think of, at the gym for. It's because I want my knees to not hurt when I run because I really like running. And I want to better prepare my body to be able to go out for a run and not have to deal with conscious things. So I can just go to that space of like, the activity is I'm going to run up the mountain. And all I'm going to think about is going up the mountain, almost to the top, and it kind of sucks.
That's the interesting space because that's what applies to day-to-day life, which is where like the mindfulness behind physical fitness is where the concept of mindfulness, which maybe everyone's not aware of, like just being conscious of what your body's doing, where that overlaps with day-to-day life, right? Historically, it's been very important to be mindful in sports, although that's not the word they use. Like, hey, when you shoot a free throw free throw is a bad example. When you're like rushing down the court and have to shoot a 3-pointer, you need that to be automatic. Your body needs to know what it feels like to shoot a 3-pointer from that spot on the court and at that angle, and when you're moving at that speed and there's a player in front of you. But that same concept can and seems very beneficial to apply to like day-to-day interactions. Like posture has always been an important thing. Even when it was like medieval England and like royalty was taught to sit up straight to present themselves. There's a physical benefit to that. And just the concept of sit up straight isn't the right way to do it. The concept is work this into some physical activity where you consciously make your mind do this. And then later when you are at a dinner party, you will sit up straight because you're used to making your body do that. Your body has been conditioned to have good posture.
Well, so that's what's interesting about the conditioning, and this is where I think this applies to normal people's lives, is that conditioning is not, you can't just say to somebody, sit up straight, sit up straight, sit up straight. Part of it is, you need to make it a habit to sit up straight. But if you don't have the musculature to sit up straight, then you're not going to be able to do it. And so sometimes the problem I think people have with habits is this idea of like, I want to be a runner. And so they go run 2 miles, which doesn't seem like a lot, or a mile. It doesn't seem like a lot. But if you have never run before, you're just not prepared for that motion at all.
Right.
In the same way, if you say to somebody, stand up straight, stand up straight, stand up straight, I mean, eventually it'll work because they'll develop the musculature from standing in that direction. But my theory about it, and I've seen this play out over and over again with athletes, with clients, whoever, is instead of telling you to stand up straight, like if stuff really feels better when you stand up straight, if I strengthen the muscles that will help you stand up straight in a gym or by giving you an activity to do that strengthens them, you'll just stand up straight, which is a really interesting component of this, which I think will maybe bring it back into territory where we feel more comfortable. But like, think about, let's take it away from the Zen spot to that idea of like brain as computer, right?
Yeah.
Like your brain, they talk about the computational power of the brain.
We're pretty fucking complicated. We probably also don't even know entirely. Shit's really complex in there. It does amazing things.
Never mind trying to talk about which percentage of that we're aware of and we use consciously, but that crazy ass giant computer is devoted to controlling your body. Yeah. Right. So the idea that you can, through conscious thought, override what that computer is trying to do when it has you slouch, to me is just bananas. Like
bananas is a good reference.
Which is funny that I say bananas because one of the things you do for posture is tell people to imagine holding a banana between your shoulder blades.
Yeah.
We have a friend that frequently goes, banana, if you're slouching. But just the thing is, so that idea that you can continue to yell at your child to sit up straight, like it doesn't work if the muscles don't work for sitting up straight. And so no matter how much your brain says, okay, sit up straight, like if you can't support that, you're not going to be able to do it. And so part of the idea of training for sports for me is about how do you strengthen the body so that once the unconscious trigger goes, and once you ask, I got to hit this volleyball, and what you're telling your brain is, the most important thing right now is, I don't care how you do it, but get this volleyball, that you have the muscles to be able to do that in such a way that you don't then go, oh, but now I can't move anymore. Because your body will do that. Like it will get you to that ball. It'll get you away from that mammoth. But afterwards you might be going, oh shit, that hurt. I can't move now.
Are there other types of mammoths besides woolly mammoths?
I don't know.
Are there like leathered
Did I call
mammoths?
it a woolly mammoth just now?
And no, you just said mammoth.
Okay.
Just get you away from that mammoth.
woolly mammoth.
There probably
leopard mammoth.
Leathered, I think.
Leathered mammoth.
Or a goofy billed horned mammoth.
A dragon scale mammoth.
Sure. That'd be great.
But so, like, an interesting example of this is what's happening when you have like a muscle spasm, and even how your brain controls how a muscle flexes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when you talk about the massive compute power that your brain has, and that it's devoting to the function of your body most of the time, like, it's aware of where you are in space and what's going on with every muscle and the angle of that muscle and all this stuff, where if you just start to extrapolate to the amount of data it's processing to know where you are
That's
in space and how to do
incredibly
things,
difficult to do with a
is
machine.
bananas. Bananas
Yeah.
again.
Bananas
So
again.
much.
Bananas everywhere.
So much computation. And so, like, it has mechanisms for how to sense all that stuff. And this is kind of what you study when you're studying biomechanics stuff. I mean, to an extent, what you can do with your body is just bones are levers and muscles pull on them. And if you understand all the fulcrum points, you can kind of figure out what has a mechanical advantage going what direction, which means you can start to figure out the path that a muscle will go through if you ask it to do a certain task. And you can go, well, the path of best mechanical advantage to do this thing you just asked for, hit a volleyball, is achieved by, you know, this particular motion. But then your brain can also tell how fatigued those muscles are, and it can tweak that motion based on which muscle is in the best shape currently to move you through that path. And then it can also, if it needs to, shut down certain muscles if they're injured so that they don't get injured further. And so that's why you see, like, people that run really funny sometimes, because that's a compensation pattern where they're asking their body to run and it's going, okay, I can do it, but it's going to be real janky and I'm going to sort of flop sideways and do this weird thing with my arm to get my, you know, momentum going forward, but it's achieving the thing you're asking it to do.
Yeah. You see that with all kinds of activities. I mean, weird golf swings and basketball players that shoot funny from the hip. And I don't know if that's a thing, but
yeah, no, totally. And well, that's the funny thing about how it applies to sports, right? Because people talk about, like, the perfect golf swing, and the idea of trying to figure out the perfect golf swing is partially contingent on your body. But there's a guy, Jim Furyk, his name is, who has this big goofy loop in his swing that, in terms of what they teach you for how to have a golf swing, looks atrocious. But he is a professional grade. He's won tournaments. He is a real good golfer. So I always bring him up as proof that it's actually just about repeatability. If you can repeat and calibrate that motion, it can look like whatever you want it to look like, as long as the thing is achieved for that particular sport. What's interesting, though, is that idea collides with the fact that that guy who's running funky might be putting stress, like, on his knee joint in such a way that eventually that knee cartilage is going to wear away and he's not going to be able to keep running that way. So there is a correct way to run
for your body.
Yeah.
That's hard to find.
And so that's the other sort of piece, I guess, of finding that flow, right? Is like, what's that right way to do the thing? And so back to what I was saying about how muscles fire, because this strikes me as super interesting.
Mm-hmm. You were telling us about the spasm.
When your brain sends a signal to your muscle to contract or to release, it only sends that one signal. And then the signal that keeps it contracted only pings your spinal cord and then goes back to the muscle. So it starts a feedback loop of, until the signal to stop flexing is sent by your brain, it just runs this feedback loop between the muscle and the spinal cord to keep that those fibers flexed, basically. Mm-hmm. I'm trying not to go too deep into how this all works, because but so spasm is generally something is hurt, and so to protect that joint or to protect the muscles around it, it sends a signal that says, fire this guy and don't stop firing it, even if I tell you to stop. And that's part of a compensation pattern. And so what it's doing is it's locking up whatever that, and it's locking you into a certain position where it knows you'll be safe from whatever it has sensed is the thing that's going to hurt you. Which is interesting, because sometimes you have a spasm and people go, push on it, go get a massage. And Yeah, sometimes maybe the massage is the right thing if you're okay to go back in that path and what it's responding to is acute trauma, where it's just saying it's locking down because you got hit or something, right? But you'll be okay in 20 minutes. But if what it's responding to is that path is bad for you and you should stop, and you go get a massage and you make that muscle release by pushing on it even harder to the point that the brain is like, fine, I'll let go because now you're going to hurt this muscle more than you are going to hurt the other thing that I'm trying to protect, like, then yeah, it will release. But that doesn't mean that now you're back to fit to go perform that motion. And I guess like where that's fascinating to me is it comes back to that same thing of unconsciously your body has great command over what the hell is happening.
It has like authoritarian command,
right?
Really. If you hold your breath long enough, you eventually, well, I guess that's not a good example because you'll pass out. Can you hold your breath till you pass out, or will your body not let you do that?
I don't know.
Maybe that's a myth. That'd be an interesting Mythbusters look up. I've never tried either. It seems like a dumb thing to do.
But so I guess what made me think of that was the idea of if you say, okay, I got to get away from this mammoth, or I've got to, if you tell your body, I have to pick up this thing, that's what has to happen. And you pick it up and then your back goes out. Or you dive for a volleyball, but then you get up and you're like, shit, this thing is spasming now. Like that's because your body will let you try to do a motion at least the one time in a bout to try to survive.
Right. Well, it doesn't necessarily know what's going to happen either, right? I suppose.
Until you try it, yeah.
Yeah.
But then after that, it might go, oh, don't do that again.
Right.
Right. And then, so the thing about practice is how do you, just like playing a musical instrument or standing on one foot and then trying to transition to another pose in yoga, is how do you do that over and over again in such a way that you develop that pathway so that the brain recognizes it as a thing that you can do. It can be done safely. It can be done unconsciously.
Right.
And now you can have this space of focusing on, if I do this the right way, then there's like peace in the world.
Well, this is one of the areas where I come back to with yoga, that I feel like it does a very good job of forcing you to consciously become aware of your body's limitations, because it's kind of designed in a way that it takes your body to its full range of motion in every way. Like every way you can move your arm or your shoulder joint works or your elbow or your legs or your hips. It's designed to take you to maximum range of motion. And this is where you always bring up, and very rightfully so, that people get into trouble with that because they force themselves to go somewhere that their body's not ready to go. They force their hips to open too wide, or they force their arm to stretch too far, and they tug on their shoulder in a way that's damaging for it. But what's cool about yoga, and the mental model I always use is that, because I use yoga poses to get ready for sports. When I'm going to do another activity, I'll usually do 5 minutes of yoga real quick. Not so much for like a stretching. I don't know what stretching is. I don't like it as a concept. I think it needs to be rebranded and rethought, but I use it as in a sense to wake up the systems of my body. If I'm going to go play a sport, I'm going to use my body to its full range of motion capacity in every way, right? You're going to be jumping and reaching and diving and running and squatting, and so all of us, if I do yoga real patiently, where I'm consciously aware, all of a sudden I'm pinging all those systems. I'm pinging my central nervous system. I'm saying, hey, my arm's about to go way back behind me, and then way overhead, and then way in front of me. Hey, just wake up, be aware, know that's going to happen. And then you are consciously booting up these systems. At least this is my framework. I don't know if this has any bearing in reality, but
it's fair, because it's if you watch like athletes before a race or something, right? Like they're always kind of doing this limbering up thing, which
right,
I
like
wouldn't call it stretching, because they're not pushing themselves into another space, but they're like, like Michael Phelps does it before races. He puts his hands behind his back and he stretches. Mm-hmm. Like stretch again is a bad term, because he's not applying an external force. He's just taking them backwards as far as he can push them.
Maybe momentum, maybe a little bit of momentum, but
yeah, right. But like, Yeah, so stretching is an interesting topic, and it's super touchy for people because they really, really enjoy it. Usually the people that really enjoy stretching enjoy it because there is what I want to say right now is stretching is destructive. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, so, you know, like a bomb is destructive. Like stretching is terrible, but it's more the sense of it causes tissue damage, and that tissue damage results in endorphin release, which makes people feel a buzz of like, oh yeah, that's good.
Oh, I did something good.
But it's not actually that great for you. And the reason to say that it's not that great for you is the context where it comes up in yoga is a perfect example. Because if the idea of yoga is to be able to support yourself in a position, whatever it is, and to be able to flow into that position and out of that position, if you have to like, if you think about a standard sort of stretch that people do, I don't know if it's a yoga thing so much, but like when you take your arm and you put it across your chest and then you pull it with the other arm into your chest, right? Like that other arm is applying an external force. And so the only way that you're able to get into that position is with that external force, which means within your arm, you don't have the musculature to take yourself into that last 10 degrees that you're pulling yourself into with your arm.
So why put your arm there in the first
place? And to get yourself out of that last 10 degrees. And so if you can eventually build to where you can get your arm to go further because the muscles support it, then by all means, have that mobility, have that range of motion. But if you have to take a strap, or you have to take your hands, or you have to get in a strange position in order to force a thing with gravity or the floor or with something else into that position, you're just like forcing against connective tissue and against your brain's impulse to not let you go into that position that I was just describing before to get into that position. And so
you're definitely breaking things.
It can be dangerous because if then you go do that unconscious activity and you have this extra 10 degrees of motion in your shoulder socket because you've pushed against it to get it into that space, and you go to spike a ball, when the momentum of your arm is going backwards, it's going to let it go that extra 10 degrees unsupported because because the connective tissue and everything has been forced into that position and is now lax enough that it can get there. And that's when everything else freaks out because it goes, I'm not supported here, and locks down all the rest of them. And that's how you end up going to spike a ball and then coming back down and going, oh, fuck, my chest hurts, my back hurts. What just happened? Oh, I don't know. And what happened is that extra 10 degrees is what happened.
Other than like something like a broken leg, something that's like very obviously acute failure because of an outside force, I think it seems very obvious that most injuries occur at range of motion like that. They're range of motion injuries, like extremes. Muscle injuries come from that for the most part, right? You reached funny. People say like, oh, I tweaked my back. Well, yeah, because you like dove to catch a football, or you went somewhere that your body wasn't prepared to be, and then applied a force to it that it wasn't able to support. Like very
right. And so the idea of stretching is to put yourself, if you push yourself into that position, not with the muscles that are built to take you that direction, then you're creating an instability. And so this idea of like, yoga, like I can put my feet behind my head. If you have to take your arms and pull each foot individually to be behind your head, then you can't put your feet behind your head. Like, yes, you can get them there, but you cannot, without external help, put your feet behind your head.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Like the difference that I'm gunning for there.
Absolutely. And that's a good one because there are people that can put their feet behind their heads like while they balance up on a hand, and it's crazy to see. And it's very clear that is like an impressive thing as opposed to more of like there's a little bit of a shock and all like, ooh, you did it when people like stuff something somewhere.
Right.
And this is a great, I'm actually really surprised I haven't been injured a lot more doing yoga, and that people in general don't get injured more in yoga because the idea, its goal really is to push you to those limits. And when you're not told, which most people don't talk about, that you shouldn't go beyond that limit because you do things like twists and Twist is a big one. You do a lot of like spinal twists, which just sounds horrible, right? That sounds like don't ever do spinal twists. But when you recognize that the idea is not to like wedge your elbow against your arm and twist your body too far, it's to go as far as you can with the musculature around your spine and wake that up and be alert and strengthen those muscles so that you can twist with control.
Right. And as they get stronger, you'll be able to twist further, which is one of the cool things about the idea of the like limitation of range of motion. You can like frequently, and this is the thing we used to do in our like biomechanics stuff, you can ask someone to try to touch their toes and they won't be able to do it, right? And common if they are not able to do it, common knowledge tends to say, oh, well, your hamstrings are tight. And it turns out more frequently it's actually an abdominal weakness. And what you are missing is the strength in the front of your body to pull you into that position. And so your body's locking down your hamstrings to keep you out of an unsupported situation. And if you have somebody do a couple of sit-ups and then try to touch their toes again, they can do it. And it's because, like you just said, you woke up the supportive musculature for this sort of awkward position that you don't ask your body to get into all the time. And now you can get into this position that we otherwise said was because X, Y, and Z is tight. And it's not because it's tight, it's because it's unsupported. And so one of the things where yoga is beneficial is it's yoga. We keep coming back to yoga, I think, because it is the most overt component of mindful motion.
For sure. Yeah. It's like a 50-50 balance.
And they call it a yoga practice because if you ask yourself to go into these positions every day and you keep doing it over and over again, you build strength and you are more able to get into these positions. And things that would otherwise be awkward, like that spinal twist, when you twist to grab your kid from running in the street and then go, oh, my back. Like, if you are mindfully getting into that position and you're knowing what that position is and you're strengthening that position, you're building the ability that when you need to grab that thing, you can get to that position and go, bam, got it, strong.
Didn't hurt myself.
It's back to that sort of unconscious piece, right? Like one of the guys that I work with frequently who listens to this podcast, he for a while was he was talking about this idea of preparation for chaos, where the idea of training, the idea of any sort of practice like this is not necessarily to get better at the thing. It's to be ready for that moment when a thing falls off your desk and you go, hop, and catch it and then go, oh, fuck yeah, that was cool. Put it back down, right? It's like, it's that chaos. It's to not throw out your back when you got to go, whoa, and grab a thing. But part of that is about strengthening that pathway so that you can get to that thing without going through an unsupported position where your body goes, oh, no, that was bad. I'll let you do it once, but after that, we're locking down to heal for 6 months. Which I guess gets to another thing that's really interesting, which is the idea of those compensation mechanisms, which is how like gloriously awesome the body is as a mechanical system. It has so many different ways of getting your stuff to go through a different pathway if it needs to, that it can shut down 6 of the muscles in your shoulder and still do most of the things you need a shoulder to do while those ones heal. And then once they're healed, they can turn them back on. It will start using them again. And then and it ends up being this long pattern of maybe you move funny, but you eventually get back to your shoulder works.
Also that you can hopefully reproduce. That's all it's there for. It's not so we can play guitar.
Oh,
although guitar also serves that purpose.
Which is really, it's funny that you bring that up, but it's kind of what I was thinking the whole time when you're talking about like this, when you're talking about, yoga and like you want to push into that position, right? Because the idea is to get into this position. And I think where yoga gets harmful is when there starts to be competition for who can get into that position
when the ego
better.
Comes in.
Because now your ego wants to impress the people in the room so you can make babies with them. And now you're pushing too far into that spot and you're letting competition take over. And it ends up being this really sort of Zen existence that for me, CrossFit is this way, because CrossFit is like, take that competition that I just talked about
That's
and
their
turn
own
it up
purpose.
to 11.
Right.
Like, so I like doing the CrossFit workouts and I like the competitive element, but it ends up being almost a Zen practice for me to pull back from the extent to which that competition takes over.
That's a
because
very
it's
interesting way to
not
put that.
important. It's not important that I beat the people in that room.
For sure.
If I hurt myself, there's no point.
Yeah, you ruined it.
I ruined it.
That's a really neat way to put that. Your Zen practice is avoiding doing the thing that's trying to happen there.
Like, and so even in yoga, I would have to do the same thing when I was doing yoga regularly, which
Right.
would be like, hey, that person can do that. That's pretty impressive, but I'm not there. And part of the practice is to own that you're not there and that you can get there incrementally, but you have to do it safely. And the practice ends up being this awareness that's even a level above the rest of it, which is just,
Yeah.
you know, don't go to that place where you hurt yourself.
So let's talk about the zone, getting in the zone as an athlete or in any other activity. Because you do a bunch of stuff that I bet you get in the zone for. It isn't just working out.
I think the zone is that what we were talking about. It's like that unconscious. I think it exists in yoga too. When you find that spot where you're like, I hit the pose, I am balanced, I feel strong, I could stay here all day. It's when that preparation or that practice or whatever you're talking about sort of crosses over into that unconscious space where all of the conscious processing power that you have is devoted not to how do I get here? It's just devoted to get here. So like you were talking about, like the basketball player where all they're thinking about is this ball's got to go in this hole. I don't know how I'm going to make that happen, but here we go.
Go for it, body.
And it just happened. Yeah, exactly. And that's what it was like for me with swimming races. All of my races were sprints. Longest race was like 2 minutes. And if I had time, even in the longer 2-minute race, to think, oh, I screwed that up, then the race was over. Especially in the shortest one, the 50, which was hopefully 19 seconds long if you were great. If you had time to think a thought during that race, then you lost. Like I knew before I finished, if I came off the wall and I thought, hey, that guy's over there.
Damn it.
That was it. Race is over.
Tom Cruise says it best when he's asked about what he thinks about when he's up there flying a $50,000 to $50 million Tomcat in a dogfight. And he says, there's no time. You think you're dead.
Time to think. You think, God, he sounds like such a douche in that moment. But he's right. You're dead. So what I guess is interesting is like where I feel like this ends up being where we can get to some sort of moral for this stuff is
I love moral.
Working out and fitness and health and all of that stuff is like the idea of I should be healthy is a nice idea. You feel good when you're healthy, but it only matters because you feel good, right? Like it has to do with where your brain is.
Right.
And so if you're like particularly out of shape or something, or if you want to incorporate fitness into your life, there are so many different options for things to try. Like the one to go try, I think, is the one where you can find that practice that we were just talking about. Not that practice like you repeat the thing, but that practice where the meditation exists, you know, and where you can find that space where, look, and all I'm gunning for here is enjoyably not getting hurt while you're doing an activity, right?
Right.
And for a lot of people, that's going to mean finding the meditation in realizing that I am not fit muscularly to walk for more than 10 minutes because for 20 years I have done nothing but sit. And so you need to try to find the meditation and the peace in I'm going to get up, I'm going to walk for 10 minutes, and then I'm going to stop. Even though I feel like I could go for 20 because I'm hyped up and I feel good, Stop at 10 minutes and own that is the way to do it. And that's the Zen piece with fitness, which is I did the 10 minutes. That's the practice. Now I'm strong because I'm not going to do the biggest loser, break myself bullshit. and I'm going to sit down. And then tomorrow I'm going to take the fact that I still have energy. I'm going to be excited to do the 10 minutes again. And you keep doing that until the 10 becomes a higher number, and that's how you build it. But it's got to be this progress that's so incremental and slow that it feels like meditation.
That's I find in everything I do in life, the things I tend to enjoy the most are the things that I am able to, or that allow me to just focus on those things. And that's what I consider meditation. So this happens a lot with exercise. I kind of said this stuff at the beginning, but I think that's the place you want to go with fitness and exercise. You want to take it to a place where you engage yourself fully, so that you can just be present in that moment. You're not stressing. A lot of the benefits I get from physical activity are that they engage me in a way that I stop thinking about everything else in my life that's stressing me out. And that's actually maybe more than the physical fitness, more than like the desire not to have a heart attack early, or to not throw out my back. That's probably a lot less important to me actually than the hour I get when I go to yoga that I don't worry about a project that's due for work, or I'm not stressed about paying my credit cards. And so I think that's something that people should really look for in activities in general, but especially with physical fitness, and look for ways. Yoga does it because there's like a class atmosphere. There's a physical control with your conscious mind part. There's like a breathing thing, which is really part of that. It's part of the value of breathing is it distracts you. It's something weird to focus on that takes a lot of mental resources to do. And then I think a lot of people who like, when people go running, they listen to stuff. They'll listen to podcasts, or they listen to music they like, and they sing along, or they go with a friend and they talk with their friend. And like, I notice these really interesting things in sort of engaging physical activities. Like I have some of the best conversations with other people when I go for hikes, because there's like, just for my body and my mind balance, there's like just enough of this distraction from the physical activity that like conversation flows just right. And you're like kind of participating in something, and I get really distracted and I get lost in it. And like, I always come out of hikes and it's been very meditative. I'm not distracted by stuff that's normally bothering me. And I think that aspect of physical fitness is what's really emerging as maybe the most valuable part of being fit and being active, is freeing your mind to, and then you enjoy it, because who doesn't come out of not being stressed for an hour feeling better?
Right. Well, and that's what's, so as we get to this, as sort of the bit at the end, I was immediately thinking like, I got to go back and cut out all that biomechanical stuff. But like, but I don't even think, but I don't even think that that's true, because like, that's just sort of a breakdown of the path that I took in terms of trying to find the science in like, what is that zone, and how do you get there and whatever. And what I've gotten to in all this, trying to understand the central nervous system and how it commands the mechanical system of the body, it's realized how much of that is not conscious. And so that flow state, that zone that they talk about, that sort of what you said, being present in that moment, is a thing that's achievable even at the lowest level of physical fitness.
Just going for a walk, there's so much to focus on.
You just have to know to find it, and not be driven by stupid Nike ads, and not be driven by this idea that beat your neighbor is how you find that flow, or, CrossFit, it works for a lot of people, so I don't mean to knock it, and I enjoy doing it. But part of CrossFit, I think, is about finding that flow by by it being so hard to do that you can't focus on anything but that you think you're going to die. Right?
Yeah.
Which is why it also hurts a lot of people. Yeah. That's why it hurts a lot of people. And you have to, if you're going to do CrossFit, you have to find a gym that's very good about progressing you into being able to do the crazy shit that you see on TV. but yeah, I mean, I think that's really, the Zengineering in the middle of the whole thing, which
we'll
is
have
just
a great book of Zengineering world one day.
If you're just standing
coffee table
at your desk instead of sitting, try to find that place where you can focus on, I'm on one leg and I'm here, and what does it take to stay on one leg? And think about only that for 3 minutes or whatever. And that's That's why yoga is a giant phenomenon of generally positive energy, I feel like.
Yes, positive energy. I like when you say things like that.
I feel like that's a good place to. Yeah, I feel like you're always surprised when I say positive energy. I think maybe because I'm generally sort of cynical, but I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit. We both are. I think we both surprise each other.
But I strive for positive energy.
Yeah.
I feel it.
We're in the same boat, buddy.
So yeah, that feels like a good wrap up, right?
Yeah, I think that was
In my
pretty
head, I
good.
feel like we were all over the place, but
We definitely were.
know.
We definitely were. But this is a big, we've avoided a topic like this on purpose for a while. And so it felt like one that I was pushing us to do because we just did our guest episode and we're in double digits now. And so we have to start going after some things that aren't just let's talk about an iPhone, which is like a very
stuff we talk about all the time.
Yeah, to really get into the Zengineering goal that I think we're striving for, we have to go outside of things that are absolute. Like an iPhone
I hope this is
works this way, So
I hope this is where where the listeners can jump on board and questions that came out of our diversions, comments, whatever
topic ideas.
Let us know.
Really focused topic ideas would be helpful because
This
clearly
is an example of a topic where we were like, we talk about this all the time. We should do a podcast on it. But the reason we talk about it all the time is because this could go on for 12 hours.
Right.
Like it's so complicated and it's so fascinating and it's so
important,
weird and so important and I wish people could be healthier and I don't know how to help them. although I generally claim to do it for a living.
You do. You help people all the time. And you have for a long time. It's been a driver in your professional life your whole life.
But
strong.
Anyway, thanks for sticking around for our flailing attempts to help you.
Yeah. Don't forget to meditate tonight.
Don't forget to meditate tonight. I should plug. There's an app called Headspace. You should try it out. A lot of those dudes that spend all their time like thinking about productivity and blah blah blah, the Tim Ferriss types of the world, have in their top 3 things you should do as meditate. And
for sure.
a great way to get an introduction to that is an app like Headspace. It's a really solid one for meditation. I use it every day.
Cool.
And it's interesting because it kind of kicks back to the same thing you were talking about. Like one of the main tenets of meditation is to focus on your breathing, and focusing on your breathing is like, it's almost like what I was saying with CrossFit. Like the practice ends up being pulling back from something that's so automatic, breathing, to actively think about your breathing because it's so automatic. It's actually really hard.
Super
it's really
hard.
hard to stay focused on your breathing. And so like people say when they practice meditation, I guess this is the only other thing I want to say because this feels like it's actually helpful. The idea of when they say they practice meditation, it's not they do it repetitively. The practice of meditation is the part where you're trying to focus on your breathing and your mind wanders and you catch it and you bring it back. Every time you catch it and you bring it back, you just practiced.
Yeah.
Because the point is to try to be able to bring it back freely to this other point of focus anytime that you want. Practice is not doing it every day. Practice is not being able to do it better than the other guy. The practice is you should feel satisfaction every time you catch that your mind wandered and you bring it back, because that's the practice. That's what you're practicing. That's just you hitting the right note. That's you getting the ball in the goal.
It's control of your own being. It's catching yourself. We just did this in a hit list topic the other day, earlier today, whatever, where you have an emotional reaction to something and say something that you shouldn't have said. It's that. It's catching everything. It's just being aware of your being. And it's really important. It's really important physically. It's really important mentally. And the thing that's been the most interesting about yoga is that because it's this really good balance seemingly of mental and physical, is that it has just accidentally, I did not go into it at all with this intention, but it has infested every other part of my life. Meditation, and I chose that word to be an aggressive word. I don't mean it necessarily to be bad, but I want it to be like shocking. Like it has gotten everywhere else in my life. I think about breathing, and I think about posture, and I think about I think about what I'm thinking about. You know, that there are these meta layers to your own mind and your own reactions and your own physical being, and it's awesome. And then it has cascaded into my other physical activities. And so now I take a yogic approach to an aggressive competitive sport or to debate. It's just this, man, go meditate tonight. I was joking, but I mean it. Just go chill and be with
really
yourself.
try it. And that's why I support it with that stuff, right? Because it's like, because I try to pull it back from the woo-woo part, which is just like, you know, the number of successful people who point to meditation as a key part of their ability to maintain productivity is remarkable. It's like 90% of the people that Ferris talks to on his podcast list in the top 3. I do this and I do this and I meditate every day. Mm-hmm. So even if you think it's bullshit, maybe give it a try because it'll make you a millionaire. You know, I don't know. Okay, let's get out of here. You know, find us on the places where you find us. Socials, hello at zengineeringpodcast.com if you want to get us directly.
Yeah,
Buy some stuff at stuff.zengineeringpodcast.com. We're working on some new t-shirt designs. We'll get those up.
Stuff. You can subscribe on iTunes or apps like Zencaster. Not Zencaster. What the hell's it called? Stitcher. Stitcher is one of them. Downcast. Is the one I use. And then it'll just push episodes to you. And you can subscribe to all the other awesome
subscribe wherever you get them. Rate and review on iTunes. All that kind of stuff.
Give us stars and comments.
And like we said, ideas for what to talk about. Otherwise, we'll just keep talking.
We'll just ramble.
Stuff that we think is interesting.
Ramble.
Which so far, nobody seems to mind. So thanks for that.
Thanks for hanging out with us. It's real nice.
I'm Adam.
I'm Brian. Oh, damn it. Get out of here.
They don't know what I know.
Which would be a really weird way to describe a date as a social outing. This has the consistency of a date. You fooled me.